Hey, what's up, guys? This is my part 2 video where I'll be explaining the rest of a June past paper, right? Paper 1. So let's get into it. Okay, question 2. 2.1 says, given that 4 minus 2x is less than 18, where x is an element of real numbers, okay? So it says 2.1.1, solve the inequality, okay? So let's get straight into solving this inequality. So 2.1.1, we have 4 minus 2x is less than 18, okay? Right, so we want x on its own, so we're going to say minus 2x is less than 18 minus 4, okay? So minus 2x will be less than 14, okay guys? So what we can do is here we can divide by -2 on both sides, okay? So x will now be greater than -7, okay? Because remember, we changed the sign of x by dividing by -2. So when we change the sign of x, the rule is that the inequality will swap positions. Can you see that? Okay. You guys still remember this? Okay. So let's have a look at the next question, 2.1.2. Hence, represent your answer to question 2.1.1 on a number line. Okay. So we're going to draw this now on a number line. So 2.1.2, our number line will simply look like this. You'll have your number line, okay? You're going to have your -7 there. You're going to have your 0, okay? And we know that x is greater than -7, okay? And we know we're going to have an open circle, right? Guys with me? Right, let's go to the next one. Next question says now, 2.2, solve simultaneously for x and y, okay? And we've given two equations, minus 2x minus y equals 10, and 3x minus 4y equals -4, okay? So I'm just gonna make some space here so that we can get that sum done. Okay, let's have a look at it. I'm gonna rewrite it now. So we're gonna say minus 2x minus y equals 10, and 3x minus 4y equals -4, okay? Right, guys, let's get into it. Okay, I'm gonna now use the first equation. So let's label this number 1 and let's label this number 2, okay? So I'm now going to create my third equation. I hope you guys were taught this way. Remember, there's two ways to do simultaneous equation. You can do substitution or you can do elimination. I'm going to do substitution today with you guys, okay? So we're going to say, we're going to make either one of them the subject of the formula. I would say making y the subject of the formula. If we choose equation 1 would be the easier way out because it doesn't have a coefficient. So we're going to say minus y equals 10 plus 2x, okay? So I took 2x to the other side. So I'm also going to multiply this equation by -1 so that I can make y positive. So -1, so that's going to be y equals -10 minus 2x, okay? And we're going to call this equation now equation number 3. You guys are following, right? And I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to substitute 3 into 2, okay? Because I already manipulated 1, so I could make 3, right? So I'm going to sub 3 into 2, okay? And let's do that. So we know that 2 is 3x minus 4y equals -4, okay? So wherever we see the y, we'll place the new value for y, which is minus 10 minus 2x. Okay, so let's get into it, guys. So we're going to say 3x minus 4. Okay, and now remember y is now minus 10 minus 2x. Okay, and that is equal to minus 4. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and multiply this in like this. Okay, so we know that 3x minus 4 times minus 10 is going to give you a positive 40, and minus 4 times minus 2 is going to give you a positive 8x, because it's a minus 2x and a minus 4. Minus times minus is plus, and this we're going to bring over. It's going to be a plus 4, and that's going to equal to 0. Okay, so basically we can actually leave that 4 there. Let's leave that 4 there, because we're going to take that 40 over. Okay, so we're going to say 3x plus 8x is going to give me 11x, and that's going to equal, we take the 40 over, it's going to become minus 40, so you're going to be left with a minus 44, right? And now obviously we're going to find x. We divide by 11 on both sides, so we know that x now equals negative 4, right? Because 11 goes into 44 4 times, and it was a negative 44. Okay, so we found x now. We know that x equals negative 4, right? Okay, allow me to erase this. We have found x now, and we know it is negative 4. So we can go ahead and substitute x into any equation. Okay, so I'm going to substitute x, okay, into 1. Alright, so we know that 1 is minus 2x, right? But now remember, x is negative 4, so it's negative 4. Okay, minus y equals 10. Okay, and now we have a normal linear equation. So what we're going to do, we're going to multiply negative 2 into the bracket. So negative 2 times negative 4 is going to give you a positive 8. And we still have your minus y equals 10. Okay, you guys still following? Right, what are we going to do now? We are going to take the 8 over. Alright, 8's going to go over that way. So we're going to say now that negative y equals 10 minus 8, right? So it's going to be 10 minus 8, which is going to give you 2. And again, we don't want y to be negative, so let's multiply the equation by negative 1. So therefore, we know that now y equals negative 2. Okay, so you guys have your solutions for this simultaneous equation. We know that x is negative 4 and y is negative 2. Okay, right, that is done. Simultaneous equation done. Okay, so I want to get this away here so we can jump into the next question. Alright, so your next question now says that Pusela gave a third of his money to Seboye and 1/5 of his money to Ramoba. Ramoba received 28 rand less than Seboye. Okay, so now they're asking us, how much money did Pusela have originally? Okay, all right, so we can say that it says that 1/3 of Pusela's money was given to Seboye, okay? So what we're basically going to do is we're going to let the amount that Pusela originally had, we're going to name that X, right? Let's name it X. Okay, what he originally had was X, okay? Right, so what we're going to say now is that Pusela gave 1/3 of his money to Seboye and 1/5 of his money to Ramobe. And Ramobe received 28 Rand less than Seboye, okay? So what we're going to basically say that he gave the 1/5, okay? And we're going to say 1/5 of his original amount. And we're going to say this is going to equal 1/3 of his original amount minus 28, because it did say Ramobe received 28 Rand less than Seboye, okay? So Seboye got 1/5, and we know that Seboye as Ramobe has 28 less than Seboye, okay? So now we're looking at this equation over here, okay? So we don't want to work with fractions, all right? We never want to work with fractions. So how do we get rid of these fractions? We can quite clearly see that I can multiply this by 15. We can multiply that by 15, and we can multiply this by 15, okay? By doing so, we can now see that 5 goes into 15. How many times? We know 5 goes into 15 3 times, so it's going to be 3x, and 3 goes into 15 5 times, so it's going to be 5x minus 28 times 15. You guys can do that on a calculator, and that's going to give you 420. Okay, let's move this up here. Okay, so we want to get our x's on one side, right? Because it's an equation with an unknown, so we're going to find the unknown. So we're going to say that 3x minus 5x. So remember, I took the 5 over. It's going to equal to negative 420. Alright, so 3x minus 5x is going to give me minus 2x. And that's going to equal to minus 420. Okay, and then we're going to divide by negative 2 on both sides. Okay, and now we're going to get x on its own. Okay, so we can see now that negative 2 goes into negative 420. How many times? So that's going to be a positive 210. Right? So what conclusion can be made now, guys? We can say that Pusela, right? Pusela initially had a 210 Rand, right? Because remember, the question was, how much money did Pusela originally have? Okay, so that is our question 2 done and dusted. Okay, let's move on to the next question. So the next question is your functions, and it looks like we have a parabola and a straight line. Okay, let's get into it. Let's look at the facts. It says the graph of f of x equals ax squared plus q, and the graph of g of x equals mx plus c. Okay, and as it's drawn below, E, K, and S and H are points on F as shown below, and E and S are the points of intersection of F and G. The graph of G has a gradient of 2. Okay, so this is very, very important information. Let's look at the first one. The first one now says that we need to write down the range of F. Okay, so we can quite clearly see that the range there would be this point here. Okay, so we know now that 3.1, that y is less than and equal to 12. Okay, so we can see there that y is less than. Okay, remember, if we look here, we can see it's less than 12, so less than or equal to 12. Okay. The next question says determine the equation of f, and that is a 5-mark question. So again, let's look at the facts here. Right, we have a point on f. Okay, that point is k. We also have another point which is e. Okay, right, so we can go ahead and find this. The first one we can look at is finding our q value there. Okay, so how do we do that? We can say 3.2 that using point k. Okay, using point k, I can now say that 12 equals 0 plus q. Okay, as you can see there, I'm substituting my 0 and my 12 into f of x, right? I'm substituting it into that equation over there. Okay, guys, because we know that x at k is 0 and y is 12, okay? And remember, your q value is actually your y value, okay, of your turning point. Right, so that's why 12 equals 0 plus q. So therefore, we can now deduce that q equals 12, right? Okay, so that's one step, right, guys? So that's going to get you a few marks. I'm guessing about maybe 1 mark for finding q there. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of it. We do know we have another point there, and we know that point E, right? Point E, let's just check there was another point. It was 0, minus 3 and 0. So we can work with this, right? Minus 3 and 0. Okay, so what are we going to do now? Right, so we found our q value, so we know that f of x, right, f of x equals, what did they give us? Let's have a look. Ax squared plus q. Okay, right, so we know it is ax squared plus q, right? So we can now take point E. We know we have our x value and we have the y value there, and we found q, right? So what are we going to do? We're going to put our y value in there. Remember, f of x, that's going to be your y value, so it's going to be 0. And we know our a value, we don't know. However, we do know our x value, which is minus 3, right? That's minus 3 squared plus q, which is 12. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and find a now. I'm just going to throw a line here so we can do it here. So we know now that we're going to get basically a positive 9a, because the negative 3 squared will give you 9 times a is 9a, and if we take the 12 over, it's going to give you a negative 12, right? So what are we looking at? We divide both sides by 9, so a equals negative 12 over 9, and we can see there is a highest common factor there of 3, so therefore a equals negative 4 over 3. Okay, so we have now our a value. We found our q value earlier, so we have the answer to our question. The question was determine the equation of f. Okay, so we can now do that. So we can do that here. So let me take that out. So you can now say that f is f of x equals, remember a is negative 4 over 3, right, x squared plus 12. Okay guys, and that will be your equation for f. Okay, let's go look at the next question. I'm just going to make some space here again. Okay, so the next question says determine the equation of g. Okay, alright, so that's your straight line, guys. So let's have a look at it. So we know that 3.2, we know that g of x equals mx plus c. Okay, that's what was said to us. Alright, so we also know that if we use point E, right, if we use point E and our gradient, which was stated earlier, it says that G has a gradient of 2, okay? So we know that M equals 2, right? Because M is our gradient, right guys? So we do know that we have point E on that line, as you can see there. E is on that line over there, and we know the gradient is 2, right? So this is not going to be too difficult. Let's have a look at it. Let's use point E and let's substitute it into g of x. Okay, so we know that E is, let's just have a look again, it's 3 and negative 3 and 0. So we know E is negative 3 and 0, right? So let's do that substitution over there. So we know that our y value is 0. Okay, our m we know is 2. Alright, we know that x is negative 3, and the only thing we don't know in this case is our c value. Alright, okay, so we know we can take this over, which is going to give you negative 6. So if we take it over, it's going to give you a positive 6. So therefore c equals 6. Okay, and there you have your equation now, right? So the equation now for g of x will equal 2x plus 6. Alright, that one was fairly simple, guys. Let's just check that mark allocation. That was for 3 marks. That was a good 3 marks. Okay, let's look at the next question. Let's just get some space here. Okay, next question says determine the coordinates of S. Okay, right, so this is going to be a bit of work. As you can see, it is a 6 mark question. Right, so let's look at the facts. Let's go up. So as you can see there, S is a point of intersection, right? Can you guys see that there? That is a point of intersection where f of x meets g of x. Okay, so what does that mean, guys? You do know what this means, right? We can now say that we can equal f of x to g of x, right? Because S is the point where the two of them meet, right? So now it makes our life a bit easier, right? How do we start this? We can say that f of x is negative 4 over 3 x squared plus 12, and that's going to equal g of x, which is 2x plus 6. And as you can see, this is just a normal equation, right? Okay, so if this is just a normal equation, we can jump straight into it. Okay, so let's do the math. Let's bring the let's bring the 2x over, and let's bring the 6 over. Okay, so what are we going to be left with if we do that? We're going to have a minus 4 over 3 x squared plus 12 minus 2x minus 6 equals 0. Okay, and then if we do the math, we can say 12 minus 6 is going to give me 6, right? So let's just do it. Minus 4 over 3 x squared minus 2x plus 6 equals 0. Again, we do not want to work with that fraction over there, so we're going to multiply everything in the equation by 3. Okay, so what's that going to be? If we multiply this by 3, that cancels, so you have a minus 4x here. If you're going to multiply negative 2x by 3, you're going to give it a negative 6x. And if you're going to multiply 6 by 3, we're going to get a positive 18, okay, equals to 0. Right? And as you guys can see here, we have a quadratic equation, right? However, we can basically, what we can do here is we can take out the highest common factor, right? The highest common factor would be in this case 2, okay? We can say the HCF here is 2. Okay, my HCF is 2. So we don't want this negative here as well. So we're going to take out a minus 2 here. We're going to be left with 2x squared minus 3x, right, minus 9. Okay, why am I writing my 9 like this? Minus 9. Okay, that looks better, and we know this is equal to 0. Okay, let's get into the factors. Okay, let's get some space here, guys. Okay, I don't have any space left, so let's take all of that which we have done already away. You guys followed how we got to that point. So remember, we left with a negative 2, and we have a 2x here squared minus 3x minus 9, and that's equal to 0. Okay, so we can take that away now. So what are we going to be left with? We know if we factorize this trinomial, we're going to have 2 brackets, and we're going to have factors 2x and x, and minus 2. Actually, it's going to be a minus 3 if we want that 9. So we're going to say minus 3 here, and we're going to say plus 3. Okay, so therefore x is going to give you 3 over 2, or x will give you a minus 3. Okay, so we're not done quite just yet, guys. Okay, so at point S, right, at point S, the x value must be positive, right? You guys with me? Must be positive. If you guys remember, if we go look over here, if you look where that S is, right? So can you see right there? So this must be a positive x value. Can you guys see that? Okay, so whatever S is going to be, x has to be a positive x, right? Remember, you have x and y here. Okay, right, quite clearly you can see your y value is also going to be positive. But so that means, right, what does that mean? We can now use x equals 3 over 2, right? Because we know that x has to be positive, right? So let's have a look at this, guys. So, right, so if we know that at point S, the x value must be positive, therefore we can now substitute x equals 3 over 2 into g of x, right? Because we know that point S does lie on the graph g of x, right? Okay, and g of x we know is equal to 2x plus 6. So what are we going to do? We can now remember g of x is another way of saying y, so we can say y equals 2 times 3 over 2 plus 6. Okay, so we're going to multiply that out. So 2 times 3 is going to give me 6, divided by 2, that's going to give you 3, and then plus 6. So therefore, we now know that y equals 9. Okay, so therefore, we can say that S is 3 over 2 and 9. Okay, I know that was quite a bit of working out, guys, but that just earned you 6 marks. Okay, that was a lot. Right, let's look at the last question. It says use the graph to determine the values of x for which f of x is greater than and equal to g of x. Okay, so let me just get some space here again. Okay, right, let's look at it. So 3.5 says now that we can determine the x values for which f of x is greater than and equal to g of x. Okay, so let's look at the graph. Okay, so where is f of x greater than g of x? So we can see there it is at the point x is negative 3, as you can see it there. Okay, let me just show you. There we go, just there. Okay, and also at the point x is equal to 3 over 2. Okay, so what is that gonna look like, guys? As an answer, we're gonna say that negative 3 is less than and equal to x. Okay, and x is less than and equal to 3 over 2. Okay, and that is it for question 3, guys. Okay, right, let's get into the next question. The next question is a exponential function, right? Let's look at it. It says the graph of g of x equals negative 2 to the power of x plus b, and it's sketched below. B and c are the x and y intercepts of g respectively. Okay, right, let's look at the first question here. It says write down the range of g. Okay, and we can quite clearly see if we look at it here that y, okay, so 4.1, we can see that y is less than, so we're gonna first have to work this out. Okay, apologies, I see there that they did give this over here. Okay, so that is it. So y is actually less than 8. Okay, as you can see there, y is less than 8 for g. That is your range. Okay, remember, it will never go over this line over here. Okay, remember, g will always come close to that line but will never cross that line. So your range is y is less than 8. Okay, right, the next one is 4.2, and it says that the value of b, okay, also for 1 mark, and we know that b is going to be equal to 8. Okay, we know that b is going to be equal to 8, as you can quite clearly see there. Have a look there. We can see that is your b value, right? So b is equal to 8. Next one says write down the coordinates of b, okay, which is this point over here. Right, so what we're going to do, we're going to say that 4.3, we can say that g of x equals negative 2 to the power of x plus 8, right? Because we know that b equals 8. So what are we going to do? We're going to say that we're going to let g of x equal 0, okay? So if we let g of x equal 0, so 0 will now equal negative 2 to the power of x plus 8. Okay, we can take that negative 2 to the power of x over. So we have 2 to the power of x equals 8. And we know how to solve exponential equations. We're going to change 8 to 2 to the power of 3. So therefore, we're going to drop our exponents. So x will equal 3. Okay, you guys with me? So we know now that y is 0, and if y is 0, x is 3. So b will be 3 and 0, right? You guys with me? You can see there point 3. Point b is 3 and 0 because y is definitely 0 at that point, right? Okay, and it was an easy 4 marks. Okay, I see it says 5 over here. Okay, and let's maybe say that this was actually a 3 plus 2 is 5. Why am I being so silly? Okay. Alright, there's one more question. It's question 5. The hyperbola h is described with the following properties. The equation of the vertical asymptote is x equals 0. And the range of h is given there and u is given there. And then the x-intercept of h is 2 and 0. They want us to determine the equation of h for 4 marks. Okay, it's a 4-mark question. This should be fairly easy. Okay, we know the general formula for a hyperbola is, we can say that h of x equals a over x plus q, right? You guys know this. Okay, and we can say that the horizontal line that the graph must not touch, okay, is y equals 3. Okay, so remember it did tell us there, right, that the range of h is, you can see the y value there is 3. Okay, so we know that this graph must not touch, right, y equals 3. Okay, this is your asymptote, right? You guys know this. So what are we going to say? We're going to substitute our point, our x-intercept there, which is 2 and 0, into h of x. Okay, and if we do this, we can now say that 0 equals a over 2 plus, we know our asymptote there, y equals 3, which is your q value. Okay, what we're going to do, again, some simple math here. We're going to take the 3 over. So we're going to say a over 2 equals negative 3. And what you guys can do, if you saw all my previous videos, normally the easiest thing to do here is just say let's cross multiply. Okay, so what are we going to get? We're going to get a equals negative 6. Okay, and that is as simple as it can be, guys. We can now say that therefore h of x equals negative 6, your a value, over x plus 3. Okay, and that will give you your equation of h for 4 marks. Okay, And that is all it is for today, guys. That was 4 marks. The whole paper came out to 50 marks. Okay, I hope this was very helpful for your up and coming exams. Please subscribe, hit that like button, hit that notification bell, guys. Please, and get into the comment section and let me know what other videos you guys want me to make. Okay, until next time.